The massive doors of the Galactic Council's Supreme Chamber opened, with a sound like thunder rolling across the cosmos. Ambassador David Blake stepped through the threshold and stopped, his breath catching despite years of diplomatic training. The chamber stretched before him like the inside of a hollow moon, its curved walls rising so high they disappeared into shadow. Thousands of alien beings filled the tiered seating that spiraled upward in endless circles, their varied forms creating a tapestry of impossible biology. Blake had seen the holographic recordings, studied the architectural plans, and received detailed briefings about the council chamber. Nothing had prepared him for the reality of standing alone on the polished obsidian floor while representatives of 847 different species stared down at him with eyes that ranged from compound clusters to crystalline arrays to organs that detected spectrums of light humans couldn't even imagine. The air hummed with tension and the underlying quantum vibrations of the massive space station that housed the galactic government. Translator devices whispered in dozens of languages as delegates communicated in hushed tones about the lone human standing in their midst. Blake could feel their attention like a physical weight pressing down on him. High above, seated on a crystalline throne that pulsed with inner light, Chancellor Morthak of the Velthari Empire raised one of his 6 arms. The gesture commanded instant silence from the assembled thousands. When he spoke, his voice resonated through quantum frequencies that made the very air shiver. "Human representative," Chancellor Morthak announced. His words translated instantly into Blake's earpiece. "You stand before the Galactic Council to answer charges of deception, concealment of military capabilities, and violation of first contact protocols. How do you respond to these accusations?" Blake straightened his shoulders and clasped his hands behind his back. His simple black diplomatic uniform looked almost primitive compared to the elaborate bioluminescent robes and crystalline armor worn by the alien delegates surrounding him. But there was something in his posture, something in the way he held himself, that suggested he was not intimidated by the overwhelming display of galactic power. "Your Excellence," Blake replied, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I'm afraid I don't understand the charges. Could you be more specific about what my species is accused of doing wrong?" A ripple of movement passed through the upper tiers as delegates shifted in their seats. The Zephyrian representative, her translucent blue form flickering with agitation, leaned forward. "Your species concealed your true nature during first contact procedures. You presented yourselves as a peaceful civilization seeking friendship and trade, when in reality you are apex predators." "Apex predators?" Blake tilted his head with what appeared to be genuine confusion. "I'm sorry, but what led you to that conclusion?" The question seemed to catch the assembly off guard. Several delegates exchanged glances while others consulted their data devices. Chancellor Morthak's crystalline features shifted to display patterns that Blake's briefings had identified as displeasure. "The evidence is overwhelming," Morthak declared. "Your species evolved from carnivorous hunters. Your homeworld surface is covered primarily with water, yet you conquered every landmass and even learned to traverse the oceans. Your entertainment consists of simulated warfare and competitive elimination contests. Even your children engage in games that involve territorial conquest and the systematic removal of opponents." Blake nodded thoughtfully as if considering this information for the first time. "Those are interesting observations, Your Excellence, but I'm still not clear on how any of that violates galactic law or constitutes deception." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien languages as delegates voiced their frustration. Blake stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos, waiting patiently for order to be restored. When Chancellor Morthak called for silence, the humans' calm demeanor had become even more unsettling to the watching aliens. "The deception," Morthak said with forced calm, "lies in your failure to disclose these predatory characteristics during first contact. Every civilized species reveals their true nature when joining the galactic community. You deliberately concealed your military capabilities and aggressive tendencies." "Ah," Blake said, and his slight smile sent a chill through the watching delegates. "Now I think I understand the confusion. You're upset because we didn't immediately tell you everything about our species and capabilities when we first met." "Exactly." The exclamation came from Defense Minister Kralex of the Hegemony, a massive insectoid whose chitinous armor gleamed under the chamber's lights. "You presented yourselves as peaceful explorers seeking knowledge and friendship. You said nothing about your weapons, your military forces, or your history of warfare. Flake's smile widened slightly, and for the first time since entering the chamber something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Minister Kralix, may I ask what you know about human hunting behavior? The sudden change of topic caught Kralix off guard. What does that have to do with a— Humor me, Blake interrupted, his tone remaining polite but carrying an undertone that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. It's relevant to your concerns about deception. Kralix's mandibles clicked nervously as he accessed his species' intelligence files on humanity. Your ancestors were pack hunters who used persistence and coordination to bring down larger prey. They employed tools and tactics to overcome animals that were individually stronger and faster. Very good, Blake said approvingly. And what's the most important aspect of pack hunting behavior, Minister? Coordination and Kralix stopped mid-sentence, his compound eyes widening as understanding began to dawn. The most important aspect, Blake continued when Kralix fell silent, is patience. Pack hunters don't reveal their presence until the hunt is already over. They observe, they learn, they position themselves, and only when everything is in place do they show themselves to their prey. The chamber had gone completely silent. Every being present was beginning to understand the implications of Blake's words, though most were afraid to voice what they were thinking. Chancellor Morthak's crystalline form had begun to pulse with agitated light patterns. What are you saying, human? Blake walked slowly toward the center of the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the oppressive quiet. When he reached the exact middle of the obsidian floor, he stopped and looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. I'm saying that you've made a fundamental error in your assessment of this situation, Your Excellence. You believe you've discovered that humanity are predators, and you're concerned about how that affects galactic security. He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering the final stroke. But you've missed the most important question of all. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Blake's expression had shifted completely, dropping the diplomatic mask to reveal something far more dangerous underneath. The question isn't whether humans are predators, he said quietly, his words somehow carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. The question is whether any of you are actually equipped to be our prey. In that moment, as alien hearts and their biological equivalents began to race with primal fear, every delegate in the chamber realized they had made a terrible miscalculation. They had thought they were judging humanity's fitness to join galactic civilization. Instead, they had just walked directly into humanity's carefully laid trap, and the hunt was about to begin. The silence that followed Blake's words seemed to stretch for an eternity. Chancellor Morthak's crystalline form had gone completely dark, a sign that either indicated deep contemplation or complete terror among his species. Around the chamber, delegates who moments before had been confident in their position of power now found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about the galactic balance. Defense. Minister Kralix was the first to break the silence, his mandibles clicking rapidly in what Blake's briefings had identified as extreme agitation. You dare threaten the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council? This chamber is protected by the combined military might of 47 star systems. Blake's expression didn't change, but somehow his presence seemed to fill the enormous space around him. Minister, I haven't made any threats. I've simply stated facts. Would you like to hear some more interesting facts? Before Kralix could respond, Blake began walking in a slow circle, his movements casual but somehow predatory. Fact number 1. 6 months ago, the Andorian Mining Consortium reported mysterious equipment failures across 12 different asteroid mining operations. The failures followed no pattern that your engineers could identify, and replacement equipment functioned normally for exactly 72 hours before also failing. The Andorian delegate, a massive humanoid covered in metallic scales, jerked upright in his seat. How could you possibly know about classified operational reports? Blake ignored the question and continued his slow circuit of the chamber floor. Fact number 2. The hegemony's deep space sensor network has detected 19 instances of faster-than-light signatures that don't correspond to any registered vessel in the galactic database. The readings suggest propulsion, technology that's at least 3 generations ahead of current galactic standards. Kralix's chitinous armor began to produce the low humming sound his species made when under extreme stress. That information is classified beyond even council clearance. No outsider could access our quantum encrypted intelligence networks. Outsider? Blake stopped walking and fixed Kralix with a stare that made the massive insectoid take an involuntary step backward. That's an interesting word choice, Minister. When exactly did we become outsiders? Was it before or after we accessed your networks? The implication hit the chamber like a physical blow. The assembled delegates began to understand that Blake wasn't claiming hypothetical capabilities. He was describing actions that had already been taken. The humans hadn't just concealed their nature during first contact. They had been actively infiltrating galactic civilization for months. Chancellor Morthak's form blazed back to life with urgent red patterns. Are you admitting to acts of espionage and sabotage against Council member worlds? Blake looked genuinely surprised by the question. Espionage, sabotage? Your Excellence, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. We haven't committed any acts of aggression against your worlds. He paused and his smile returned with renewed intensity. We've been studying you. The word studying sent a chill through every being in the chamber. Study was what advanced species did to primitive ones. Study was what scientists did to laboratory subjects. Study was what predators did to prey before the hunt began. Dr. Rachel Torres, who had been seated quietly in the human delegation area, stood and activated a holographic projector. The three-dimensional display that filled the center of the chamber showed the entire galactic region controlled by the Council, dotted with thousands of tiny red indicators. Each red marker represents a human asset that has been in position for a minimum of 4 months. Dr. Torres explained with the calm tone of an academic presenting research data. Some have been operational for over 18 months. Deep space monitoring stations, infiltration specialists, automated research platforms, and various other observation posts. The scale of what she was describing slowly sank in. The humans hadn't just been watching galactic civilization. They had been studying it with the systematic thoroughness of scientists examining a new species. The Zephyrian representative's translucent form flickered rapidly with terror. 18 months? But first contact was only 7 months ago. First official contact, Dr. Torres corrected. We've been aware of your civilization considerably longer than that. We simply chose to observe before revealing ourselves. It's called reconnaissance and it's standard procedure when encountering potentially hostile entities. We are not hostile. The protest came from Prime Minister Yorvak of the Trade Federation, his melodious voice cracking with indignation. The galactic community has maintained peace for over 4,000 years. Blake walked over to stand directly beneath Yorvak's elevated position. Minister, you're absolutely correct. You've maintained peace for 4 millennia. That's actually part of the problem. Problem? Multiple delegates spoke the word simultaneously, their various translation devices creating an eerie echo effect throughout the chamber. Dr. Torres manipulated the holographic display, showing technological development curves for the major galactic civilizations. The lines rose steadily for millennia before flattening into barely perceptible inclines. What you call peace, we call stagnation. Your civilizations haven't developed any fundamentally new technologies in over 2,000 years. Your faster-than-light travel is based on principles discovered by the Aleri Collective 46,000 years ago. Your energy production methods haven't changed in 15,000 years. We have achieved stability and prosperity, Chancellor Morthak protested, though his light patterns had shifted to the uncertain blues that indicated confusion among his people. You've achieved stagnation, Blake replied bluntly. Do you know what evolutionary biologists call a stable ecosystem where all the predators have been eliminated? They call it a dead end, without pressure to adapt and grow, species plateau and eventually decline. Defense Minister Kralix's armor plates were now producing a continuous high-pitched whine of stress. Are you suggesting that galactic civilization requires predation to function properly? I'm suggesting that galactic civilization has been missing a crucial component, Blake answered. You've eliminated conflict, risk, and challenge. You've created a perfectly safe environment where no one needs to innovate, adapt, or push beyond established boundaries. It's very peaceful, very stable, and ultimately terminal. Captain Lisa Chen, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward from her position near the chamber's entrance. Her military bearing was unmistakable, and her presence sent another wave of unease through the assembled delegates. The captain brings up an interesting point, Blake continued. When did any of your civilizations last face a genuine challenge? When did any of your military forces encounter an opponent that forced them to develop new tactics? When did any of your governments implement a policy that carried real risk, but might lead to breakthrough discoveries? The questions hung in the air like accusations. Around the chamber, delegates found themselves mentally reviewing their histories and discovering uncomfortable truths. Their civilizations had indeed become comfortable, predictable, and unchallenged, you see, Blake said, his voice carrying the patience of a teacher explaining a simple concept to slow students. Humanity represents what evolutionary biologists call a keystone predator. Our presence fundamentally alters the behavior of every other species in the ecosystem. Your civilizations will need to innovate, adapt, and grow in ways that millennia of safety haven't required. By threatening us, accused the Velthari delegate, her voice trembling with suppressed fear. By existing as a challenge, Dr. Torres corrected. Your species will need to develop new technologies to remain competitive with ours. Your governments will need to implement new policies to address the reality of sharing the galaxy with an apex predator species. Your militaries will need to develop new strategies to ensure your security in a changed galactic environment. Blake returned to the center of the chamber, his movements now carrying the unmistakable authority of a pack leader addressing subordinates. But this doesn't have to be adversarial. Predators aren't just hunters. They're also protectors of the ecosystem. Humans have a long history of forming beneficial relationships with other species, even prey species that proved valuable to the overall environment. Chancellor Morthak's crystalline form pulsed with desperate hope. What are you proposing? Blake's smile widened, but now it carried a different quality. Not threatening, but not entirely reassuring either. We're proposing partnership, Your Excellence. Your civilizations provide stability, infrastructure, and the accumulated wisdom of millennia of peaceful development. Humanity provides innovation, adaptability, and the evolutionary pressure needed to prevent stagnation. He gestured toward the holographic display still showing human assets throughout galactic space. These observation posts weren't positioned to conquer you. They were positioned to protect you. Because while you've been debating our worthiness to join your civilization, we've detected threats approaching from outside the galaxy that make our little discussion here seem quite trivial. The mention of external threats had transformed the atmosphere in the chamber from fear to something approaching panic. Chancellor Morthak's crystalline form cycled rapidly through color patterns that Blake's briefings identified as extreme agitation, mixed with desperate curiosity. Around the tiered seating, delegates huddled in urgent consultation groups while others frantically attempted to contact their homeworlds. External threats? The question came from Admiral Vexar of the Frontier Defense Corps, a grizzled veteran whose scarred carapace spoke of actual combat experience. Our deep space monitors show nothing unusual beyond the galactic rim. Blake exchanged a glance with Dr. Torres, who manipulated the holographic display to show the galaxy from an external perspective. Dark zones appeared along the rim, areas where space itself seemed to bend light away from observation. That's because something is actively preventing your sensors from detecting what's actually out there, Dr. Torres explained. These null zones began appearing approximately 3 years ago. Initially, we assumed they were natural phenomena, cosmic voids or dark matter concentrations. Further investigation revealed they were artificial. Artificial how? Admiral Vexar leaned forward intently, his military bearing sharpening with professional interest. Someone or something is systematically eliminating the quantum signatures of entire star systems along our galaxy's border, Captain Chen answered from her position near the chamber wall. Whatever technology they're using is beyond our current understanding of physics. The affected regions aren't destroyed AR. They simply stop existing in any detectable sense. The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Several delegates began arguing in their native languages, while others demanded immediate access to their military communication systems. Chancellor Morthak raised multiple appendages calling for order. You claim there's an invasion force approaching our galaxy? Morthak's voice carried the quantum harmonics of barely controlled terror. We claim there's something approaching, Blake corrected. Whether it's a natural phenomenon, an artificial intelligence, or another species entirely, we don't yet know. What we do know is that it's systematically moving toward populated galactic regions, and our current technological capabilities appear insufficient to understand or counter. At Turti Defense Minister Kralix's chitinous armor had begun producing harmonic resonances that indicated his species was preparing for fight-or-flight responses. And humanity believes it can succeed where our combined civilizations would fail? Blake's expression shifted, dropping the last pretense of diplomatic courtesy to reveal something that made even the chamber's artificial lighting seem dimmer. Minister, humanity believes that a galaxy full of stagnant civilizations will certainly fail when faced with an unknown threat. But a galaxy that includes both innovative predators and experienced defenders might have a chance. As if summoned by his words, more humans began appearing throughout the chamber. They emerged from maintenance corridors that shouldn't have provided access, stepped out from behind decorative columns, and dropped silently from ventilation systems that were supposed to be too small for human-sized beings. Within moments, there were dozens of humans positioned strategically throughout the vast space. The alien delegates found themselves looking around in growing horror as they realized they had been surrounded without knowing it. These weren't diplomats or scientists, They were soldiers, and they moved with the fluid coordination of a pack that had hunted together for years. How did they get in here? Kralex demanded, his voice rising to a near shriek. The security protocols for this chamber are absolute. No unauthorized beings can enter without triggering every alarm system in the station. Captain Chen smiled with predatory satisfaction. Minister, your security protocols were designed to keep out beings who think like individual threats or massed armies. They weren't designed to keep out beings who think like wolves. Admiral Vexar, despite his obvious alarm, maintained his military composure. This is an impressive demonstration, but if you're attempting to intimidate the Council into submission— Admiral, Blake interrupted, if we had wanted to intimidate you into submission, this chamber would already be filled with corpses, and your homeworlds would be watching their stars go nova. The casual way he delivered the threat sent ice through the veins of every being present. Blake gestured toward Dr. Torres, who expanded the holographic display to show detailed tactical information about every Council member world. Each of these installations has been monitoring your civilizations for over 2 years. Dr. Torres explained with scientific detachment. Deep space observation posts, infiltration specialists, stealth vessels, and automated systems that your military analysts would classify as planet killers. We have complete tactical intelligence on every major population center, military installation, and industrial facility in Council space. The Zephyrian representative's translucent form was flickering so rapidly with terror that her outline became difficult to distinguish. 2 years? But we only detected your species 18 months ago. You detected us when we chose to be detected, Captain Chen corrected. We've been observing your civilization since shortly after you achieved interstellar communication capabilities. We simply preferred to understand the situation before making contact. This is reconnaissance on an unprecedented scale, Admiral Vexar said, his voice mixing professional admiration with personal horror. The resources required, the coordination necessary, the strategic planning are what you might expect from apex predators who learn to hunt in coordinated packs, Blake finished. Admiral, your species evolved from solitary ambush predators who relied on overwhelming individual strength. The hegemony developed from hive-minded insects who think in terms of mass formations. Both are effective strategies, but they're not the only approaches to warfare. Blake began walking slowly around the chamber's perimeter, and the human soldiers shifted position in perfect coordination with his movement. The effect was subtle but unmistakable. They were demonstrating pack behavior in real time. Pack hunters think differently, Blake continued. We think in terms of patience, misdirection, and coordinated strikes from multiple directions. We don't announce our presence until the hunt is already over. We don't attack until we're certain of victory. And we don't reveal our capabilities until doing so serves our strategic objectives. Chancellor Morthak's crystalline form had gone completely dark again. What are your strategic objectives, human? Survival, Blake answered simply. Ours and yours. Because while you've been debating our worthiness to join your peaceful civilization, that external threat has been steadily approaching. And when it arrives, all of us, human and alien alike, are going to become prey to something that makes our little demonstration here look like a children's game. The chamber fell into absolute silence as the full scope of humanity's revelation sank in. They hadn't been conquered or threatened with destruction. They had been presented with a choice between evolution and extinction. Dr. Torres activated a new holographic display showing projected timelines and threat assessments. Based on our observations, the external phenomenon will reach the outer rim of populated galactic space within 18 to 24 months. Our current technological capabilities are insufficient to mount an effective defense. However, Blake added, a galaxy that combines your civilization's accumulated knowledge and resources with humanity's innovation and adaptive capabilities might be able to develop countermeasures in time. You're proposing a military alliance, Chancellor Morthak said, though his voice suggested he understood there were deeper implications. We're proposing an evolutionary alliance, Blake corrected. Your species need the selective pressure of competition to drive innovation and prevent stagnation. Humanity needs the resources and stability that your civilizations can provide, and all of us need to adapt rapidly if we're going to survive whatever is coming from outside our galaxy. Captain Chen stepped forward, her military bearing shifting to something more diplomatic. This doesn't have to be adversarial. Pack hunters are also pack protectors. Throughout human history, we've formed beneficial relationships with other species, even prey species that proved valuable to the overall ecosystem. What exactly are you offering? Admiral Vexar asked, his tactical mind already working through possibilities. Blake's smile returned, but now it carried genuine warmth rather than predatory threat. Partnership, Admiral. Your civilizations provide the infrastructure, manufacturing capabilities, and accumulated scientific knowledge. Humanity provides the innovation, adaptability, and evolutionary pressure needed to push beyond current limitations. He gestured toward the humans positioned throughout the chamber. These soldiers weren't positioned here to conquer you. They were positioned to demonstrate that we could have conquered you at any time over the past 2 years, but chose not to. We want partners who will challenge us to be better, not subjects who will bow before us in fear. Blake's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Then you continue as you have been, governing your peaceful worlds and maintaining your civility. 4 hours had passed since Blake's initial revelation, and the judgment chamber had transformed into something resembling a war council. The aliens had called for multiple recesses to consult with their homeworlds, while the human delegation had remained calmly in position, neither pressing their advantage nor retreating from their claims. The psychological effect was deliberate and devastating. They appeared completely confident in their position, while the galactic representatives scrambled to understand their new reality. Chancellor Morthak called the assembly back to order, his crystalline form now displaying the steady blue patterns that indicated formal diplomatic discourse, rather than panic. Around the chamber, the delegates had visibly regrouped, though the underlying tension remained palpable. Ambassador Blake, Morthak began, the Council has consulted extensively with our respective governments. We have reached a preliminary consensus, but there are still questions that require clarification. Blake nodded respectfully. Of course, Your Excellence. We expected nothing less from representatives of such experienced civilizations. First question, Defense Minister Kralix interrupted, his mandibles clicking with residual nervousness. If humanity has possessed these capabilities for years, why reveal them now? What has changed to make secrecy no longer viable? Dr. Torres answered from her position at the holographic display console. The observation phase has reached completion, Minister. We've gathered sufficient data about galactic civilization to formulate comprehensive integration strategies. Continuing to operate in secret would now provide diminishing returns while increasing the risk of accidental discovery. More importantly, Captain Chen added, the external threat timeline has accelerated. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected increasing activity along the null zones. Whatever is causing them appears to be moving faster than our initial projections suggested. A new wave of tension swept through the chamber. Prime Scholar Jorvac of the Academic Consortium leaned forward with intense focus. How much faster? Our original estimates suggested we had several years before any external threat could reach populated regions. Blake's expression grew grim. Scholar, your original estimates were based on incomplete data because your sensors couldn't detect what was actually happening along the galactic rim. Our estimates suggest 18 to 24 months before the phenomenon reaches the outer colonies. That's impossibly short. The protest came from Fleet Admiral Nexor of the Combined Defense Forces, whose multiple arms gestured frantically as he calculated tactical implications. No civilization could mount an effective defense against an unknown threat in less than 2 years. No traditional civilization, Blake agreed. But we're not proposing traditional approaches. We're proposing evolutionary ones. Dr. Torres manipulated the holographic display to show comparative development curves. Your civilizations have achieved remarkable stability and efficiency within established parameters. However, stability comes at the cost of adaptability. When faced with unprecedented challenges, stable systems tend to fail catastrophically. She highlighted specific examples from galactic history. The Corvani Empire had the most advanced military in the galaxy 12,000 years ago. When faced with the Void Plague, their rigid command structures and standardized responses proved completely inadequate. They went from galactic superpower to extinct within 50 years. The Void Plague was a natural phenomenon, Admiral Nexor protested. It couldn't be fought with conventional weapons or tactics. Exactly our point, Blake said. Unknown threats require unprecedented responses. They require the ability to rapidly develop new technologies, implement untested strategies, and adapt faster than the threat can evolve. These are capabilities that emerge from evolutionary pressure, not from stability. Captain Chen stepped forward, accessing her own data files. Human military history provides numerous examples of inferior forces defeating superior ones through innovation and adaptability. Our species has a talent for developing asymmetric solutions to overwhelming problems, such as. The question came from Colonel Drex of the Frontier Marines, a scarred veteran whose interest appeared to be purely professional. Colonel, during our species' second global conflict, a small island nation developed radar technology that allowed them to defeat an aerial invasion force 10 times their size. During our Cold War period, economic and technological competition drove innovation that advanced our civilization by centuries in just decades. When faced with existential threats, humans don't just adapt, we transcend our previous limitations. Blake walked to the center of the chamber, his movement drawing the attention of every being present. What we're proposing isn't conquest or subjugation. We're proposing symbiosis. Your civilizations possess something humanity lacks: our deep knowledge, vast resources, and millennia of accumulated wisdom. But you've never had to apply that knowledge under genuine pressure. We have, Dr. Torres added with quiet confidence. Pressure creates diamonds, as we say. It also creates technological breakthroughs, strategic innovations, and evolutionary leaps that would be impossible under stable conditions. Chancellor Morthak's patterns shifted to deep contemplation. You're suggesting that galactic civilization requires predation to function effectively? We're suggesting that galactic civilization requires challenge, Blake corrected. Predation is just one form of challenge. Competition, resource scarcity, technological races, strategic conflicts. All of these can drive advancement. Your civilizations have eliminated virtually all forms of challenge in pursuit of peace and stability. The Zephyrian representative spoke hesitantly, her translucent form still flickering with residual fear. But surely peace and stability are preferable to constant conflict and uncertainty. Captain Chen's expression softened slightly. Representative, peace and stability are tremendous achievements. No one is suggesting you abandon them. But they shouldn't come at the cost of growth and adaptability. The external threat approaching your galaxy doesn't care about your peaceful intentions or stable societies. Blake nodded agreement. What we're proposing is controlled pressure, enough challenge to drive innovation and prevent stagnation, but not so much as to threaten the stability you've worked millennia to achieve. How exactly would this controlled pressure be implemented? Admiral Nexor asked, his tone suggesting professional skepticism mixed with growing interest. Dr. Torres activated a new holographic display showing proposed integration models, competitive research programs, strategic exercises, technological exchanges, and collaborative defense initiatives. Think of it as evolutionary pressure applied through cooperation rather than conflict. Your civilizations would compete with human innovation, while humanity learns from your accumulated knowledge, Blake explained. The result would be rapid advancement for all participants while maintaining the peaceful framework you value. Defense Minister Kralix's armor had stopped producing stress harmonics, suggesting he was beginning to see possibilities rather than just threats, and humanity would share these advanced technologies and capabilities you claim to possess? Minister, we'd be partners, Captain Chen replied. Partners share resources, knowledge, and capabilities for mutual benefit. But partnership implies equality, not charity. We'd expect equivalent exchanges. What sort of exchanges? Chancellor Morthak asked, though his tone suggested he was already calculating possibilities. Blake's smile returned, carrying genuine warmth for the first time since entering the chamber. Your civilizations have manufacturing capabilities we can't match, accumulated scientific data we'd need centuries to duplicate, and cultural wisdom that could prevent us from making catastrophic mistakes. In exchange, we offer innovation engines, adaptive strategies, and the kind of breakthrough thinking that emerges from evolutionary pressure. Plus, Dr. Torres added, our deep space monitoring network, stealth technologies, and tactical intelligence systems. When the external threat arrives, you'll want every possible advantage. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated the proposal. The humans had moved from threatening conquest to offering partnership, but the underlying reality remained unchanged. Humanity was no longer asking permission to join galactic civilization. They were offering to reshape it. Colonel Drex was the first to speak. Assuming we agreed to this partnership, what would be the immediate priorities? What actions would need to be taken before this external threat arrives? Blake exchanged glances with his colleagues before answering. Colonel, the first priority would be establishing joint research initiatives focused on understanding the null zone phenomenon. We need to know what we're facing before we can develop effective countermeasures. The second priority, Captain Chen continued, would be military integration exercises. Our forces need to learn to work together using combined tactics that leverage both human adaptability and alien capabilities. Admiral Nexor leaned back in his seat, his multiple arms moving in patterns that indicated deep thought. The scope of what you're proposing would require unprecedented cooperation between species that have never. 6 hours after Ambassador Blake had first entered the chamber, the atmosphere had undergone a complete transformation. What began as humanity's trial had evolved into the most significant diplomatic negotiation in galactic history. The alien delegates, initially unified in their suspicion and fear, had fractured into distinct factions as the reality of their situation became clear. Chancellor Morthak called for what everyone hoped would be the final formal session. His crystalline form now displayed the complex prismatic patterns that indicated multiple simultaneous thought processes, sign that his species was wrestling with decisions that would reshape their understanding of the galaxy. Ambassador Blake, Morthak began, the Council has reached a preliminary consensus on your proposal. However, there is one final question that must be addressed before we can proceed. Blake stood calmly in the center of the chamber, no longer the defendant, but clearly recognized as an equal negotiating partner. What question is that, Your Excellence? The external threat you've described presents challenges that may be beyond any of our capabilities, even working together. What assurance can you provide that this partnership will be sufficient to ensure our mutual survival? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every being in the chamber understood that Blake's answer would determine whether they moved forward as allies or remained divided in the face of an approaching catastrophe. Blake was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a gravity that made even the vast chamber seem intimate. Your Excellence, I can't provide assurance of survival. No one can guarantee outcomes when facing the unknown, but I can tell you what humanity has learned about survival over millions of years of evolution. He began walking slowly around the chamber's perimeter, his movement drawing every eye as he spoke. Survival doesn't come from being the strongest, the fastest, or the most numerous. It comes from being the most adaptable. It comes from forming alliances with other survivors. And it comes from never stopping the search for better solutions. Dr. Torres activated the holographic display one final time, showing not tactical data or threat assessments, but something unexpected or images of Earth's ecosystem in all its brutal, beautiful complexity. Predators and prey, competitors and symbionts all existing in dynamic balance. This is what we're offering, she said. Not domination, not subjugation, but participation in a living ecosystem where challenge drives growth. Competition sparks innovation, and cooperation ensures survival. Captain Chen stepped forward, her military bearing softened by something approaching warmth. Your civilizations have achieved something remarkable. You've eliminated war, suffering, and want across hundreds of worlds. But you've also eliminated the driving forces that push species to transcend their limitations. Humanity hasn't eliminated those forces, Blake continued. We've learned to harness them. Competition makes us stronger. Challenge makes us smarter. Pressure makes us more innovative. We're offering to share those benefits while learning from your achievements in creating stable, prosperous societies. Admiral Nexor leaned forward with obvious interest. You're proposing a controlled introduction of competitive pressure into our established systems? We're proposing a partnership where both sides benefit, Blake corrected. Humanity gains access to your accumulated knowledge, manufacturing capabilities, and social stability. Your civilizations gain access to our innovation engines, adaptive strategies, and breakthrough technologies. Defense Minister Kralix's mandibles had stopped their nervous clicking entirely. And when this external threat arrives, we face it together using combined capabilities that neither side could develop alone. Exactly, Captain Chen confirmed. But more than that, we continue growing, learning, and adapting together long after this particular threat is resolved. Because there will always be new challenges, new mysteries to solve, new frontiers to explore. Chancellor Morthak's patterns shifted to the deep blues that indicated approaching decision. Ambassador Blake, if the Council agrees to this partnership, what would be your species' expectations regarding governmental autonomy? Would humanity seek to influence our internal affairs? Blake's answer came without hesitation. Your Excellence, humanity has no interest in governing other species. We're pack hunters, not hive builders. We prefer allies who can think independently and contribute unique perspectives. Your governmental systems have maintained peace and prosperity for millennia. We'd be fools to interfere with such success. However, Dr. Torres added with scientific precision, partnership does imply mutual consultation on matters affecting galactic security. The external threat will require coordinated responses that transcend individual species boundaries. Prime Scholar Yorvak spoke for the first time in hours. His multiple eye stalks focused intently on the human delegation. You're asking us to trust that humanity will remain benevolent partners, rather than becoming conquering overlords once you've gained access to our resources and knowledge. Blake's expression grew serious. Scholar, we're asking you to trust that mutual benefit creates stronger partnerships than exploitation. Conquered subjects provide minimal innovation and maximum resistance. Willing partners provide maximum innovation and minimal resistance. From a purely pragmatic standpoint, partnership serves our interests better than conquest. Besides, Captain Chen added with a slight smile, you've seen our capabilities. If we had wanted to conquer you, we would have done so years ago when you had no idea we existed. We chose cooperation over conquest because cooperation produces better results. The chamber fell silent as the delegates contemplated this final exchange. The humans had addressed every major concern, answered every significant question, and demonstrated both their capabilities and their intentions. The choice now rested entirely with the galactic representatives. Colonel Drex was the first to speak. I motion for preliminary acceptance of the human partnership proposal, subject to detailed negotiations regarding implementation protocols. Seconded, Admiral Nexor declared immediately. The external threat timeline makes extended deliberation a luxury we cannot afford. One by one, other delegates began voicing their support. Not universal enthusiasm, but pragmatic acceptance of a reality that would exist whether they embraced it or not. Humanity was already the galaxy's apex predator. The only choice was whether to work with them or hope to survive without them. Chancellor Morthak's crystalline form blazed with the complex light patterns that indicated momentous decision. The Galactic Council formally recognizes humanity as an equal partner in galactic civilization. We accept your proposal for evolutionary alliance against the external threat and for mutual advancement through controlled competitive pressure. The chamber erupted in a mixture of relief, apprehension, and excitement as delegates began discussing implementation details. Blake stood quietly in the center of the chaos, watching thousands of aliens begin to grapple with their new reality. Dr. Torres approached him with a data pad showing preliminary coordination requirements. Ambassador, the logistical complexity of what we're proposing will be staggering. Integrating human innovation with alien infrastructure, coordinating research across dozens of species, establishing joint military protocols. Doctor. Blake interrupted with a smile that combined predatory satisfaction with genuine warmth. Complex problems are what humanity does best. Besides, we won't be solving them alone anymore. Captain Chen joined them. her tactical mind already working through possibilities. The first priority should be establishing communication protocols with our deep space monitoring stations. The Council needs real-time intelligence about the external threat's progress. Agreed, Blake nodded. But the second priority should be selecting initial research teams. We need to start pushing technological boundaries immediately. Every month of delay reduces our chances when the real threat arrives. As the human delegation began coordinating with their new alien partners, none of them noticed the subtle change in the chamber's quantum resonance patterns. Deep in the station's sensor arrays, automated systems registered anomalous readings from the galactic array readings that suggested their 18-month timeline might have been optimistic. Outside the chamber, in the cold darkness between stars, something vast and incomprehensible continued its steady approach toward the galaxy's populated regions. It had already consumed 17 star systems without anyone detecting more than gravitational shadows and quantum echoes. But now, for the first time in its eons-long journey, it encountered something unexpected: coordinated resistance from species that had learned to hunt in packs, think in systems, and adapt faster than entropy could claim them. The galaxy was about to discover whether the combination of human innovation and alien wisdom would be enough to survive contact with something that viewed entire civilizations as insignificant obstacles. The hunt for survival was about to begin, and for the first time in galactic history, the prey had decided to hunt back. As Blake watched the alien delegates transform from judges to partners, he couldn't help but smile at the irony. They had called this hearing to determine whether humanity deserved a place in galactic civilization. The real test would come when the darkness BTW